Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. You are about to join a frequency that will open your mind, expand your heart, and activate your spirit. Thank you for joining Kelly Meehan, Spirit Baby Medium and Master Energy Therapist. Kelly believes in the power of the Spirit Baby. She speaks with babies in spirit before life, in the womb, and after life. She supports, teaches, and guides others to tune into the intuitive and mystical parts of life for greater wisdom. Join her in meeting your soul baby and build your connection and relationship with deep love and trust. Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio with your host, Spirit Baby Medium, Kelly.
Welcome to episode 80, February 14th, 2020. Self-love for Spirit Babies, your conception, your pregnancy, or your healing birth loss. What is self-love? Why is it so hard to love the self? What ways can self-love project me, in quotes, do for my spirit? How can Spirit Baby guide the way into an experience of true awakening? What a good topic for today. It was totally accidental, of course, talking about self-love. February 14th, right? Self-love has been a highly energized personal experience in my own consciousness and my own awareness, as well as the many others that I see and support, and even just friends. And, you know, I want to challenge people to sit really with self-love and question it. What does it really mean to self-love, right? Because it's so easy to say, okay, you should love yourself. All right, well, what does that mean? And I want to read, I almost feel like it was my kind of a journal, it felt like a journal entry, but that wasn't the initial intention, but it really feels very personal. This kind of Instagram post that I recently shared about self-love, and I feel like aligned in self-love is self-care. And here's how it goes. Sometimes you may feel completely empty of love. An empowered woman will tell you to remember your self-love. How many of us know how to receive our own self-love? Self-love is that radiance and that wholeness that can't be hidden. It is the breath of ease in the body. It is a knowing of light in the heart. Its true presence and a balance in one's world. What is the opposite or lack of self-love? It is the inner critic and the fear that enjoys playing with suffering. It can be the shadow that offers a persuasive tone of pain to keep one immobilized. Everyone has immature experiences of past mistakes, self-judgments, and the way the mind consciously replays thoughts and experiences. Some days, one may feel one's world is collapsing with hyper-focused insecurities, and other days, joy. After all, it feels so real and truthful to the moment of fear and healing discoveries. You can't push it away. Instead, you may find yourself needing rescuing or a break to regroup your body and spirit's rhythmic harmony. What to do with self-love needs. What to do with self-love needs. Your breath. Then you listen. Letting the listening be heard. Take action with it. See what happens. Wait. Be. What if the emptiness of love was not real and love was always with you? That has never left you, but you just got involved in noticing some other part of life. What would it feel like to reunite with love consciously? That love that is all yours, that love that has no condition, that love that promises to never leave you, that love that gives light to your cells in your body, that love that penetrates your very existence, that love that makes you fully live life. Don't forget that you are the love you sometimes forget about. That love can never be taken away. It never dies. It is your light that you were born from into body. Today, recognize, remember, and receive how love is your allness and existence, your foundation to root upon, blessings of love on your journey. So there's my ode to self-love, self-criticism. Again, the definition of self-love. Of course, you can see how I've defined it with the radiance, the light-bodied self. And it's so hard to see self-love not come from outside of us, right? This is very, very challenging. We want to be loved. We want someone to love us for all our faults, all our fears, all our ugly moments, physically, emotionally. And of course, the truth is, there is truth in that we are deserving of and we can be loved in our many different parts of who we are and these roles that we play out in this world. So I challenge you to look at your connection to self-love and how do you define that? Maybe write it down, sit with it, because it's easy just to say, oh, this is what self-love is and I get it. But when you really have to sit with it and create a response to it that has more texture and substance to it, it's a very different reflection. And I'm not going to lie, when I wrote that post, it was kind of dark initially. And I thought, is this me? It's my projection, right? Because as I know self-love, I know self-hate as well, like we do all, right? And so bringing that up, looking at it, being with it, how can you bring in self-hate, which is actually probably easy, probably not that hard, but how can you bring in self-love with it at the same time? How can you see the two parts? I always feel like with self-love, I've been asking yourself, again, how does self-love sing to you? How does it dance with you? Can it really be your everyday truth? Or is something lost or forgotten? Or has your past created bitterness, anger, fear, confusion, disconnect, or even forgetfulness? Have you forgotten what you deserve from your own inner well of light? As your spirit baby knows that they are the embodiment of love, and you were once a spirit baby yourself, and then you came into an earth body. And of course, that love propels, expands, continues, and you're holding maybe energy for conception or pregnancy, feeling those different parts in different times where your own self-love is. And is there generational issues with self-love? I feel like that's a big one, ancestral, generational, or I call energetic, energetic lineage. Instead of genetic lineage, I call it energetic lineage, because what does the past hold? Sometimes we're completely unaware and clueless, especially when there's chronic issues. Like, let's say babies, children have issues that are chronic and there's no foundation of emotional distress around that. Like, how is that in creation? How do the cells respond that way? What is happening, as I would say, in the background, in the beyond? Like, what's coming together and what's being worked on? Sometimes we are working through our generational stuff, and we'll talk more about that at some point. I feel like I'd love to kind of expand a whole podcast about that, the ancestral link and the energy involved and the work that sometimes feels exhausting, right? It does. It feels exhausting. And how to continue to up-level and make space and expand. Maybe that's a part of many human beings' mission. And so what does your self-love look like? That's a really beautiful idea to kind of look into. Not just, a pedicure or a massage, but really as an everyday practice. Sometimes it's hard, right? If you have a family, you have work to be done, or if you have yourself fighting against energies of self-love. And what are the things the opposite of self-love, right? We talk about self-hate or just self-disconnect. Sometimes in loss, in sickness, infertility, pregnancy loss, relationship loss, home loss. sometimes it may feel like there's no love left in all those things, but of course that's not true. The weeping of tears, of pain, confusion, of course love is still available. I feel like I use the word project me, right? I put that in quotes. I've said this before to some of my clients. Where's your project me? Because sometimes we are a project that needs a certain attention and dedication. When you're working on an art project or a creative project, it may take time to be nurtured, to be understood, to be, built and created. And Project Me is no shame in that. Project Me can involve many different ways of remembering your love, your connection. Even if you can go back into the early foundation of who you are, when you were a spirit baby, let's even go further back. So this will be an interesting conversation here. You were before a body. You were this nebulous, conscious, flowing source of something, right? Something. Maybe there's hard to put words into it. You were bursts like in the universe as stars collide together. You were formed somehow. And in that form, you took on different multidimensional experiences with different realities. And then you move into this earth-bodied experience. And this earth body has organs and tissues, and it has its own response to its world. And your light is merged with this body. Is this body whole? Is this body ready? Sometimes the body isn't ready, the parents aren't ready, and your own soul isn't ready, which is miscarriage, right? And sometimes the soul feels completion or a release. Stillbirth, right? The sudden release of a perfect body could create lots of confusion with the underlying motivating energy of awakening and something deeper and beyond that. Where that merging of light comes into the body and is ready to be a part of this world, to be birthed into this world. I joke that we come crying into this world, sometimes even crying when we leave, because the atmosphere of our bodies and our wombs, or the wombs we were in, are so comforting and so amazing and beautiful. And I'm going to get even more intimate here because I'm having this thought right now flash in my mind to share more of my own personal experience. I had a birth memory when I was born. I was born as a non-labored cesarean breech. And I came to a mother that had a lot of challenges, but I was happy and cozy in her womb. And the world was in order. And I had a very vivid memory many, many years ago when I allowed the memory to come through, that when my mother gave birth to me in this way and she held me, I knew I had to take care of her. And suddenly my world felt very heavy and confusing as an infant, conscious infant, knowing the soul self, knowing the connection of cells to the body, creating that information and that memory within the tissues, within the brain. So this is why babies have birth memories. This is why adults have memories of birth, because it's in your nervous system from that very tiny space of the spine, translated at times later to the brain to bring it into insight and information. And so knowing that my purpose was to take care of her, to love her, because she didn't have that love. What a heavy responsibility to ask of this being, right? But this being showed up, this spirit baby showed up, and thought she was doing the job she was meant to do, forwarding many years down the road, multiple levels of sickness, illness, chronic hospitalization, major autoimmune disorders, finding out from an energetic perspective the major autoimmune disorders intertwined with psychic energy, with mother, giving the self to the point of possibly one's own death. Because the love that is being asked and needed beyond the self from another is painful and was unattainable. But the small infant, the child, doesn't know it's unattainable. because the infiniteness of love is free-flowing, it's beautiful, it's amazing. Children know this, but what happens? The environment, the world, their peers, their relatives get disenchanted, lose their own connection to self-love, and then it's left with broken-hearted beings not knowing the deepest love that they are. And so you get a glimpse of some deeper energy around that self-love, because I do feel like self-love, we can go into the very positive, loving, puring parts of it, and I do want to go into that, but the heaviness of how your world is. What has your world been like with self-love? I know what mine has been, and as I've shared, you've seen a piece of that, and how now the sickness, the twistedness, is it bringing me back to wholeness? I have a choice on some level, right? It's like, where is my choice? Do I become sick and die, or do I reflect more deeply and actually push into the darker parts of the past, right? And as you have heard me say, if you have been following a lot of the things that I talk about, our past becomes our present, and how we deal with it at different times becomes something else. And so Project Me, you love Project Me. You deserve Project Me. Especially, let's say you are struggling anywhere in your life with any multiple different issues that rise. It can be so hard, but Project Me is, look, I have a healing room. This is what I call it, the healing room. This is what the family knows. Nobody's allowed in here. Kids run in once in a while. That's fine. It has a massage table in it. I have a drum. I have a crystal singing bowl. It has crystals all around the window. It has incense. I have essential oils even over here. I have beautiful spiritual cards. I could read cards to myself, how loving. I get to journal my feelings with stickers and colors, and I could beat my drum and yell and without judgment of myself, to care for myself. I can, I'm like looking around the room. I could do jumping jacks if I wanted to in the room. It's a small room, but you could still move around. I've hosted women's circles in this room. I feel like, this is just one aspect of Project Me. Also moving in the outside world, for me, is hiking, being in nature, sitting with the rock, opening up my energy field as clairsentient energy, receiving from the environment, receiving, listening, tuning in, connecting, and psychically talking with nature for my own nourishment. Water, ocean, right? Lakes, bathtubs. I'm not much of an ocean person, but though I fantasize that I could be someday. I love the bath with the salt. You could put salt in it, with flowers, with blessing. I feel like blessing the holy water for your body is a very self-loving action. Nurturing foods. And even by saying nurturing foods, I'm not talking about not eating cake. There's some amazing, still full of sugar, raw cakes and things that are so amazingly delicious. I call them somewhat healthy desserts. But even if a dessert is quote unquote bad, whatever you want to say, if you feel like you're eating something nourishing and it feels good and it gives you a certain pure energy, that's the vibration that you're ingesting. That's a part of it. But if you're eating out of guilt or pain or sorrow, your body's responding to that. Energy healing. Oh, I love energy healing. I've been missing that for quite some time, but I get to experience that very soon with new people that I get to meet in the healing arts. Journaling. I love this journaling piece, as I said, coming into the room, doing that self-action, or art, all these different art projects that people are doing, from knitting to sculpting to painting to drawing to whatever else you want to do. What a Project Me, self-loving, experience that is. Even women's circles, even hanging out with other women. Even going to the movie, even hanging out with others. I know I'm talking a lot of Project Me is all about the individual, because I do feel like self-love is very reflective of our environment for sure, and the people that are in it. Because as you saw, infant Kelly really felt molded by her environment and lost that connection. And it doesn't always have to be that way, because sometimes the journey is about finding it again and rediscovering it and bringing it back. And sometimes it comes and goes, right? It's like, okay, there's the self-hate, there's the self-love. There it kind of moves back and forth. But can the emphasis or the foundation really bring it back to self-love? Again, reversing it back when you were once a spirit baby, going into that energetic space, going into that beyond, right? The great mystery. And knowing that when you were bursting into the universe as light, your conscious beingness was always love. So then what happens, right? And then you come into this world with these projects of others to be done, connecting, listening, holding space. So Project Me is definitely a very purposeful, I should say, selfish, positive selfish act. Because as your love, inner love is filled really by your own kind of experience of who you are in the world, and that nobody has to fill that love outside of you, which is a very tricky one. I know many people are like, what's that mean? How do I do that? It's intense. I almost feel like not to separate our energy from tribe either, because when you have your baby and you're holding your baby, your heart is cracked open and just bursting. And many know this, that have given birth, or not given birth, but have become a mother or a father. As you are holding and connecting with your child, or even a toddler or a child, let's say you adopted a child, you feel it. You feel like your heart cracks open and melts all over the place. You are seen, you are heard, you are no longer the same. And that could be hard if you've experienced loss, because it brings another dimension to that. You know, having that earth connection with that bodied experience. And so even with partnership, you may be in deep love with partnership and feel the resonance of each other's love. And there's energy to be built around that by far, of course, because as your partner is activating their self-love, you get permission to be in your self-love, and together you get to expand and create greater energy of love in your life, letting that be the lead, the guide. And as I said, Project Me, yes, you can take trips, and I love to do that. I did a women's retreat back in women's retreat back last year, and it was just the most phenomenal experience ever. It was just very intuitive. We went up to a waterfall. We had a friend do a shamanic journey with cacao. We had just a lot of talking, a lot of not having to take care of anybody, right? This is the hard piece. We're just all loving and having a good time. There's even an art project, a balcony with the mountains, food, all types of goddessy foods you can imagine. That was just very joyful, nurturing, being able to sleep and be peaceful and meet the day. And so Project Me and community, going on those trips. I love taking trips to the desert. I love taking trips to nature and family trips, self-trips. Well, self-trips is a 2020 thing, is my new thing. It's a 2020 experience. And so, but what other Project Me self-loving things can we activate really as an everyday thing, right? Everyday affirmations. Really honest. Like, what does that mean? We could say quotes and words and poems. I love poems. There's so much inspiration. There's so many energy beings out here in this world that are so deeply connected to so many different beautiful poetic insights, and how we get to receive that is such a gift, really. I even like mirror gazing. I don't know if that's a word that I just made up right now. But like, you're looking at yourself in the mirror. It's so hard to look at ourselves in the mirror and go, okay, I got fat, I got wrinkles, whatever. There's always going to be something. I don't care where you are in your life. You'll say, well, look at me 10 years ago, and then 10 years pass. Look at me 10 years ago. There's always something. But really looking at yourself in the mirror and really seeing the beauty, like, oh, look at my eye color or my hair. Or if it feels like you don't have a shine, like, where can I get a shine? Let me throw some oil on my face, or, do a little hair mask, or like, I want my shine, or even just where you're presenting your clothes and jewelry or adornments. I call them goddess adornments. Like, even your outside appearance is highly reflective of your internal aware connection to that self-love. You don't have to be dressed up like an enchanted goddess with a crown, which, by the way, I would love to every day. I feel like that'd be pretty amazing. especially these goddess cards. The goddesses on them are just some of them are just amazing and so beautiful. And it's like, why then can I not be that as well? And let that personality, let that energy feel that nurturance, that richness. You know, some people like to do is pull cards, like angel cards, goddess cards, animal cards, crystal cards. I'm probably missing like a whole bunch of other cards, but like, what is the inspiration of the day? What is the mantra? I know I've often forgotten is to place my hands on my heart as I wake up and just breathing. Like, where are you, heart, today? I love you. I'm here. We're like settling in. Some people wake up with a prayer to God. Some people do a yoga meditation to Gaia. Like, where is our beginning of our day, really setting up the rest of it? Even if sometimes we wake up tired, sometimes we wake up not feeling good, you know, not over putting a strong light on the negativity, but letting it be there, because the negativity is there for a reason. And sometimes it's physiological, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's spiritually energetic. And sometimes you may not know exactly which one it is. And this is where the self-care comes in. It's like, okay, I don't know, but let me at least be in an action of self-love today because I love myself. And this is something we want to teach our children, especially if you are in conception, pregnancy, or holding for wherever it is, or with children, working with children, being of support. Children are the future. It's not a corny slogan. It's actually a truth. And so letting that be the responsibility of your self-love. We want to raise an army of universal, heart-loved, self-loved beings in the world, boys, girls, transgender, or non-gender, wherever the gender is, it doesn't really matter. Knowing to come back to the soul of light, of perfection, of connection. And self-love will test you in different ways. Where is your self-love in conception? You will be tested. It will not be perfect. You may feel the opposite of self-love, a betrayal, a fear, with yourself, even with baby. But how deeply important self-love is with any fertility journey, especially if you're moving into holding the deepest energy of conceiving, and maybe even years of infertility has darkened or created harder edges into that self-love. That's when you go even deeper and harder, that you are deserving of your own self-love and that you are allowed to expand into it, and that your baby is holding that energy with you. How about self-love in pregnancy? Of course, that's a big energy, because you are not only now holding life, which is the pureness of love. You feel it. It's reverberating into your heart space. You're having that conversation together, even in subtle, unknown ways. Even in pregnancy, body may feel so taken over and you may not feel very good. You come back, you move back and forth between the love, uncomfortableness, and love, this being. And then you birth this being alive, healthy into this world. And then the love shatters, right? This is the next level of shattering, opening, and rebirthing yourself into another part of your own existence, which can be very intense. Postpartum depression, to me, I feel like is a dying of an old self, and that death can bring in very darkness for some people and depression, because we don't teach our culture this next cycle of life, your rebirth. So something has died, and how do you mourn that death? It's a very deep place to go to. It's something I discovered not too long ago, and I feel like it deserves its own awareness, not just, postpartum depression, it happens, people aren't taken care of, and what does that mean? Now the mother's, not doing well, if sometimes even commit suicide, and then there's, what is this all? So I do feel like if there's an acknowledgement of rebirth into death for postpartum, then there would be different energy and connection to be able to be present, to recognize, to connect, bond, build together. self-love all around. Self-love from mom, self-love from baby. How about self-love in birth loss, miscarriage, stillbirth, later infancy loss, even abortion? No one wants to say the A word, right? But even breaking this up a little bit in pieces here, the self-love and miscarriage, especially when there's miscarriage, holding on for conception again, and how sometimes another miscarriage comes, and then the heartbreak, the self-hate, the self-love wanting to emerge through, and then the self-love and the loss of a stillbirth, a later loss, such confusion, such overwhelmed fear gets built. Where's that self-love? Where's that awakening? And then sometimes infants don't make it into this earth side where they have moments to hours to weeks in this world, sometimes known by the family, sometimes unknown. And it's hard to activate that self-love and that experience and all those experiences, but it's there because the love that you feel for your child is really an action of your own ability to love yourself. Otherwise, you would know nothing about love. You can't know love unless you self-love. There's no such thing of believing that you love outside of yourself. It's a misconception. And what about self-love and abortion? Oh, there's so much self-hate, self-pity, shame. So apparent. It's steeped in our cultures around the world. Women hiding, women feeling pain and suffering, confusion, not realizing the self-love, the grieving and mourning is a part of the process. That's what happens when light is disconnected and separated in that way. But love is still there. The ability to open and receive and interact in a new kind of understanding on all these areas of birth loss, activating a next level of self-love for yourself, your own deep inner awakening and experience. Not one is the same, not one is supposed to be. So knowing where your self-love resides, let that echo deeper internally into wherever you are in your life. I want to hold for all those tuning in and send a big electrifying energy of radiance, of owning and knowing your light body, and trusting that your heart is pure in its crystalline form, and that it is your true sense of embodiment, that you are and always will be love. Thank you for joining Self-Love for Spirit Baby, your conception, your pregnancy, or your healing birth loss. If you like my podcast, I want to encourage you to subscribe and leave reviews. I know iTunes does it, and so do other Stitcher and other Google platforms. But I'm hearing that iTunes, if you have an access to that, please do leave a review. It really does help, and I know I've received many emails and comments still to this day, even with private sessions, that the podcasts really do help make a difference for people, whether you are in conception, whether you are in pregnancy, or whether you are trying to heal and understand your birth loss journey. Thank you so much for joining.
This is Spirit Baby Radio. Thank you for joining Kelly in the energy of awareness, love, healing, and soul communication. Please join the next episode at www.soulbabycommunication.com.